Chances are, if you're dreaming of a move to Alaska, the one thing holding you back is a fear of the cost of living once you get here. It's dark, it's cold, and it's far away from everything, so it's understandable. How much of your monthly income is going to be dedicated to just paying for life here? Okay, we're going to get into the first thing that you need to know about the cost of living here in Fairbanks, and that's the cost of heating your home. So when I think about the cost of heating my home, I think about it as living with this terrible roommate that never pays for their own bills, never pays for rent, and just kind of mooches off of you all the time. And it kind of stinks, but it's always there. And it's something that you're going to have to pay for. The first question that people typically ask is, well, how much does it cost to heat your home every month? Believe it or not, that's a loaded question because there's way more that goes into it than just the cost of heating fuel, which we're definitely going to cover. But before we do, let's talk about a few things that will really help kind of mitigate some of those costs before we talk about heating fuel. The first thing that you need to know about is wall thickness. And you're going to see this advertised in a lumber dimension more often than not. You'll see this as like 2x4 construction, 2x6, 2x8 construction. You may see it as furred out, double wall construction. And all these things are really just talking about how thick your wall is. And the thicker your wall is, the more insulation that they can pack into those walls. The more insulation, the better your home's going to be in, trapping that heat and keeping your home, as warm as possible. So one of the things that we see on the market right now, a lot of, are 2x4 construction homes. And these homes are not necessarily all bad. But the thing is like I said before, the thicker the wall, the better. And it's going to be kind of expensive to heat a 2x4 construction home. But if it were me, if I were buying a 2x4 construction home, the first thing that I would do is upgrade the wall thickness. And the best way to do that is to wrap the outside with additional insulation. So the second thing to keep in mind is your home's elevation, because the higher up that you go, believe it or not, the warmer your home's going to be in the middle of the winter. And this has to do with something called the inversion zone, or the inversion effect that we see every winter. And typically the higher up that you go in terms of elevation, the warmer your home's going to be all winter long. So usually when you go up a mountain or you get higher in elevation, the higher up that you get, it's going to be colder. But here in Fairbanks, especially in the winter, the higher up that you get, it's going to be a little bit warmer. And we can see a pretty big temperature difference, especially here in Fairbanks, the colder that it gets, depending on the dew point, obviously. But, and that may sound a little bit strange because conventionally you'll think like, oh, well, I see mountain climbers, wearing all of these like really, really heavy gear and being super cold. And I hear about people freezing to death at these really high elevations. That doesn't make any sense. Well, think about it this way. If you've ever swam in a freshwater lake and you've gone really, really deep into that water, the deeper that you go, the colder that water is going to be. And the warmer water is typically towards the top. The same thing happens with our weather and our temperatures here. The colder air tends to stay towards the bottom because it's heavier, and the warmer air, because it's lighter, will rise to the top. So, the higher up in elevation that you go, the warmer that it's going to be. So if you take a look at this short little B-roll here, we recorded this just driving from the top of Chena Ridge to the bottom of Chena Ridge. And it's not that much difference in elevation, but it's enough to make a pretty significant temperature difference. And that temperature difference can mean a lot in terms of keeping your home warm. And it can actually be quite a bit of savings. So keeping those two factors in mind, let's talk about the cost of heating fuel. The last time that we filled our tank, we've got a 500-gallon tank at our house. We filled it up for about $4.55 a gallon. And it was a pretty big heating bill. And so if you take 500 gallons divided by 5, it should give you about 100 days at a sustained 40 below to get through an entire 500-gallon tank. And that kind of stinks because, that's 100 days to go through $2,500 worth of fuel. But we're not typically seeing 100 days of sustained 40 below anymore through the winter. Over the past couple of years, we've not really seen too many days of like long sustained 40 below days. So if hypothetically you were to go through 300 sustained days of 40 below and you had to refill your tank 3 times a year, you'd be looking at around $6,000 in order to fill your tank 3 times a year. That would be really bad. But like I said, we're not going through those 100 days long of sustained 40 below winters anymore. So it's highly likely that you'll probably be filling your tank about 2 times a year, which would put you at about $4,500, maybe $5,000 a year in heating fuel, depending on the thickness of your walls, the insulation in your home, and where your home is located. All right, now let's talk about electricity, because without electricity, we wouldn't even be doing this right now. So let's talk about it. As far as electricity goes, LEDs are going to be your best friend. With our long and dark winters being what they are, you're going to have your lights on a lot. And I mean a lot. You'll come home, you'll flip on all your lights. I'm constantly turning off lights all the time. I feel exactly like my dad, I imagine. Why are all these lights on all the time? But switching over to LEDs from regular old incandescent light bulbs, if you're still using them, will help save you a boatload of money, especially in the winter. Because the other thing to consider when we are, living here in the winter is that we also plug in our vehicles in the winter. And I'm going to be making a video about what all of that means in terms of plugging in our vehicles here very shortly. But while we're plugging in our vehicles, just to keep them warm so they don't freeze up, they're drawing electricity too all night long. So with all of these things drawing electricity, it tends to increase our electricity bills through the winter pretty dramatically. And what that does is it kind of offsets what our electricity bills are all year round. So if we look at what the average utility bills for us are, it tends to be around $250 a month annually. But take into consideration, we're a family of 4. I've got 2 younger children, and we're constantly using electricity all the time because, why not? Dad's paying for it. Mom's paying for it. So, let's just leave the lights on. Who cares? Now, if you are looking for additional savings beyond just switching over to LEDs, one option for you is solar power. And believe it or not, Fairbanks, Alaska is a great spot for solar. Now, it might only be good from like March to October, but during those months, it's spectacular, especially like in those shoulder seasons. We actually get so much sunlight. I don't have solar myself, but from what I understand, talking with those that do, drop me a comment below, actually. If you're interested in hearing about folks that do have solar, let me know in the comment section, because there are quite a few people that have solar power here in Fairbanks, and I'd love to tell you some more information if you're interested in hearing about that. Because the light from the sun is reflecting off of the snow as well, it actually increases, from what I understand, it increases the amount of sunlight that is hitting the solar panels. So those like March to May and August, September, October timeframes are actually huge solar gain months for solar panel systems. And the folks that have solar panels, from what I understand, are spending nothing on their electricity bills during those months, during that like half of the year. And they're saving boatloads on electricity. So again, if you're interested in taking a look at that, a great resource for everything solar power here in Fairbanks is Solarize Fairbanks. And take a look at the link that I've got down in the description below. They will help you save you thousands of dollars and get you hooked up with a great solar system. So take a look at that link. They'll get you squared away. So the next thing to talk about when it comes to the cost of living here in Fairbanks is our real estate prices. And contrary to some of the other more volatile markets across the country, the Fairbanks real estate market's been pretty flat typically. Now, we're typically seeing around 2 to 3% annual appreciation when it comes to property values. And that's been Fairbanks' bread and butter for as long as I've been in real estate. Now, over the past couple of years with the pandemic and inflation and low inventory, despite all of those things, we've still seen an increase. Even with how high the interest rates are, we're still seeing a little, market appreciation. In fact, we're about 8% over where we were last year. In Fairbanks, we began the year at a final sold price of about $273,872. And then we're ending the year about $294,310. This is a jump of about 7% over last year, which is still pretty crazy. I mean, like I said, we were at 2 to 3% for years, and we're low inventory and having this 7% rise. But we're not unique. Across the country, we're seeing nationwide low inventory and nationwide price increases. So the time to buy, if you were going to buy, is today. Don't wait. So this is a 7% increase of where we began the year, which is still pretty crazy. And this is almost entirely due to the fact that nationwide, our inventory has been extremely low. And that's no more evident than when you take a look at this graph, where you can see that we've been at a pretty steady decline of housing inventory since kind of the end of 2021. That being said, there are folks that have to move here. We're situated right in between both Eielson Air Force Base and Fort Wainwright. And the rotation in and out of there is about every 3 to 4 years. So our population is constantly seeing this constant turnover. On top of that, a large percentage of our population is also working as civilian contractors on both of those installations. So in one way or another, our community is supported very heavily by both of these installations. Oh, before I forget, we just updated our Fairbanks relocation guide. It's packed with all kinds of information that you need to know if you're thinking about a move to Fairbanks. Click the link in the description below to get your free copy. Ooh, also, make sure you subscribe to our channel to make sure you get all the Fairbanks related real estate content that we've got for you. Thinking about moving to Fairbanks? Well, click on the link below for my free relocation guide where I talk about top schools, top neighborhoods, and so much more. All right, next on our list is food. Now, this is kind of a big thing for my family just because we've got so many food allergies. I've talked about this before. But if your family doesn't, I'm going to talk about a few prices that we're seeing around town that aren't necessarily food allergy related. So you can fast forward if you want to. But if your family has food allergies like mine, this part you may want to pay attention to. Food's, like I said, a tough one for my family. We discovered a few years ago that I have a sensitive tummy, and so does my son and my daughter too. So there are a huge list of things that he can't eat. My daughter can't have gluten. I can't have gluten or dairy. It's awful. But what that's made us do is focus on just eating things at home. And we don't go out to eat very often, and it's kind of a bummer, but we just eat really good things at home. But that means we have to shop for really good things at what's available here in Fairbanks. And believe it or not, there are actually some, gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, pistachio-free, cashew-free, everything-free, blah, blah, blah free things all over Fairbanks. And if you're interested in learning more about some of these things and what they cost, we can absolutely do a video on that. Just let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing something like that. For instance, a loaf of what we call everything-free bread. It's made by Canyon Bakehouse. This is a Hawaiian loaf, and this is how big it is. This is a conventional loaf would be about this long, and if you look at how narrow that is, it would probably be about this wide and about that tall. So this is about half the size of a regular loaf of bread. We'll go through about 2 of those every week, and it's $9.49 a loaf. So, that's awful. Next thing on our list, a half gallon of Silk vanilla almond milk goes for about $4.79. We're able to find a carton of 18 cage-free brown eggs for $5.79. We're also able to get hamburger meat at about $5 a pound, depending on how lean it is. So knowing how and where to shop for some of these things is also pretty important. To offset some of these costs, we plant a small garden in the summer, and we also do some hunting in the fall and some fishing in the summer. But these activities don't necessarily offset all of the costs that we see in terms of our, the food costs that we see every year. So knowing where and how to shop for some of the things that I mentioned before is really important. So if you'd like to see a video about, where and how to pick up some of these, food allergy friendly foods, just let me know in the comment section below and we'll get you squared away. All right, taxes. So let's talk about taxes. We get asked this question all the time too. Is Alaska a tax-free haven? Can you just go up to Alaska and never have to spend anything on taxes again? And kind of, but not necessarily. We don't have state taxes, so that's great. We don't have sales tax, also a plus, kind of. We don't necessarily have a county or a borough tax either. Pretty cool. But we do pay federal taxes. That's a bummer. And we also pay property taxes. So, one way or another, they're going to get it. Now, the federal taxes that you pay are going to be based off of your income and where you fall within the income bracket. But the property taxes that you pay are going to be based off of the assessed value of your property, as well as the mill rate of the area that you live in. The mill rate is an expression of taxes levied per thousands of dollars in value, given the area that you live in. That might not make any sense, but here's an example. So for the area that I live in, the mill rate is 17.665. That's my mill rate. So I'll be taxed $17 or $17.665 for every $1,000 of assessed value that my property has. And the borough, the Fairbanks North Star Borough, assesses my value, my property value every year. They'll issue a new assessed value. Now they'll come out and take a look at your home and like reassess it, kind of give a visual inspection every 10 years or so, or at least that's their goal. But they issue a new assessment every year, given like right around the first of the year. So if your property was assessed at about $300,000, just as an example, and you were living in an area with a 17.665 mill rate, and you were to take that $300,000 and you were to divide that by $1,000, it would give you 300, and then you were to multiply that by 17.665, it would give you $5,329.50 a year in annual taxes. If you check out this video, it'll show you a few ways that you can kind of offset some of those and maybe change your assessed value if you're living in your home. So that video is really important, especially if you bought your home last year and you're going to be spending your first year in your home in 2024. Getting into our next one, not everybody is coming up here and is going to be ready to be buying a home right off the bat. And that's not a problem. Renting is an option. So let's talk about renting. I'm going to put some photos up here of a nice, cozy 2-bedroom, 1-bath rental in Fairbanks, right in the heart of Fairbanks. Now, the rental market in Fairbanks is pretty tough. As we've seen an increase in home prices, we've also seen an increase in rental prices. For instance, the pictures of this property that I'm showing you here, it's about $1,400 a month. And believe it or not, that's actually a very low price. When we advertised this one, there were all kinds of people posting about how low the price was to get into a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in Fairbanks right now. One thing to consider though, especially with rentals here in Fairbanks at that price and at most prices, what you'll typically find is that both heat and water will be included with your rent. So although it may seem a little bit unreasonable to pay $1,400 a month for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, you're going in not having to spend anything on heat or water. Now you will have to pay more than likely for your own electricity, your own internet, and any other kind of utility or other service that you may want there. But trash, heat, and water, all taken care of for you. If you'd like to see some more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel. And if you know somebody that might be moving up to Fairbanks, make sure to send this video their way. As always, if you have any questions about the local real estate market or just buying, selling, living in Fairbanks, you can give us a call, 907-885-0316, or you can reach out to us at our website, www.fbxhomesearch.com. Thanks, and have a great day.